explore the mental health, I would like to know how you how you understanding this scenario in military organizations. How is the mental health of the professionals that are in military? Because we know this is a big trending. So inside the military organization, you are facing this trend.
Oh, absolutely. You guys know the military pieces. You hear that four-letter acronym all the time, PTSD. And that's always going to be alive and well just based on what we're exposed to and the environments that we're in. And again, one of the best things, and it's fortunate what the military does, they have so many programs just put in place for those times and those situations, because it's just like I mentioned, you're dealing with a bunch of sometimes alpha males who are not quick to tell you if anything's wrong with them until that bottle and that cap has now exploded. And that's when it's almost too late. So having those preventative measures in place and having the right physicians and having the right communities and having the right family and readiness programs that's set up for them, and being able to educate also their spouse, because just imagine some of these gentlemen leave for a year and come back. Simple math, their home is nowhere near what it was when they left, because now whatever spouse, man or a male or female, they had to continuously keep the house going. So now they have to get reacclimated. And I think that's one of the things that was beforehand. It was always educating the person coming back. But what about the person who was still at home? Because now they have to welcome that person back, and say can't welcome that person back with like, hey, this is the list I have for you, and these are the chores I need you to do. It takes a reintegration process, but it goes to that's the biggest piece for us. The armed forces has totally just changed that perspective and mindset, because you mentioned culture, that's culture. And that culture has always existed. Like the guys who come back and can't get any help, what is the military to blame? And absolutely, to the point of, it was a sense of not knowing. Could be getting compensated, but not knowing the aftercare. And so that's one of the biggest things that we always face. Any armed forces, not even the Air Force, just all five branches, is that we're exposing people to combat and have them come back to the United States and expect them to carry on like nothing ever happened. It'll never happen like that unless some programs and things are in place to welcome them back with support, and welcome them back with mentorship, and welcome them back with someone who's just came over and got acclimated, and I can tell you the steps of what you need to do to make sure that you're good to go when you come back. Because that's one of the things we mentioned of the safety professionals that a lot of the civilian world doesn't see. We have another piece where, we travel to engage in something just to make sure that we keep our homeland safe. And that'll always be really our ultimate goal, because that's what we signed up for. We just happen to be good at safety, but yet our main job is, making sure that we're protecting.
I find this conversation fascinating from a number of perspectives. One of them is that when, let's say, people are away from home for a while for work, whether it's a day or a week or months or even, more than a year, and then they come home, how many employers really help the family reacclimate the person back into that home environment? And it makes me think and wonder, maybe it's a question, is how innovative really is the military in thinking about all of these other topics outside of the stock standard health and safety risks and topics?
Mhm.
Whether it's developing different technology, or perhaps because of some of the situations and conditions that people are exposed to, they're actually innovating at a faster rate than you might see in private industry,
Mhm.
for example.
Yeah,
Do you have thoughts on that?
they are. But just some backstory, it was give and take,
Mm.
because a lot of those private sector practices we adopted. We just happen to adopt them and make them a little bit better.
Mm.
And so now we give those back because they have people. It's a lot of different industries where they'll send people, to the Middle East for 6 months to do safety and bring that person back, knowing that, hey, that person's been exposed to something. But it was a slow process. It was a slow process to the point. That's one thing that you couldn't really get 100% efficient because it's ebbs and flows. And one thing, just knowing your intelligence and your studies, you can only imagine the history of war. They're not all the same. So right when you have a certain process to acclimate a certain group, the next group may not take on to that process. So you're always updating it and always making it for the times because it's going to change and it's going to continuously change. And no matter what's going on now, we know if we ever face another situation, the process that people may have been through Desert Storm, that's not going to stick. Now you have to change it a little bit more. But what we do and what's happening, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, people really couldn't imagine the support of those Fortune 500 companies with the military and the things they're willing to do in the programs and the investment. And hey, we built this employee action program that you may want to modify or you want to do this, or it's definitely a full-blown collaborative piece because I've seen it. I've been able to speak to some of these leaders on the outside just to get their perspective on military. And that's some of the things that I didn't know, just really coming through the ranks until I got to a certain stature. And I'm like, I never knew that it was such, a collaboration going on behind the scenes of what they're doing. One of the biggest pieces was that just, man, that's human centric at its finest, because if you bringing them back and they're not able to do their job, they're not able to perform at all, you talking about production when it stops, that can halt. Because now you have 200-300 people who really can't even integrate back in society, let alone work. So that's always going to be just top of the list. And as I said, the good old military has really got that right within the last couple of decades of just making sure that everything is in order for when those situations do happen. Then a lot of contingencies across, if a person does go to combat, things that can be done over there to make sure that they're taken care of too before, our people even come back over here. And so that's always trial and error. That's the epitome of trial and error and process improvement. And now those improvements are really a lot of when money gets split up, now a lot of that bulk budget goes to the right places. And that's a place where it should always stop in that situation.